Okay.
Well, hey guys, gals, and other pals. Have you ever experienced something so peak that you just had to share it with the rest of the world? Because that's how I feel today about The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask 3D. Now, why not talk about the original, the obviously more beloved of the two versions of the game? Well, I never actually beat the original before. Not on any console that I've tried to play it on. I played it on the Virtual Console before, on the Wii U, and then I also tried playing the original on the Switch through Switch Online, which are both through emulation, so not technically the same thing, I guess, as properly getting the original experience or whatever, but it doesn't matter. I've never actually beaten the original version of Majora's Mask, but my introduction to Majora's Mask was Majora's Mask 3D on my 3DS as a kid, and that's where I first beat the game. Although I never fully beat it. I never gotten all the masks or gotten all the pieces of heart or done all the quests until recently when I, last year I guess, obtained a 3DS again and got Majora's Mask 3D again. So I was able to fully play through the game again and actually, for the first time, get everything, 100% it, get the full Majora's Mask experience, with a few caveats of the remake. So the first part that I want to talk about with my experience and why I love the game so much actually has nothing to do with why I love the game so much. More so, I'm going to talk about my thoughts on the differences between the remake and the original version, basically going over what the differences, some of the differences are, and what I think about them. So starting off with differences that I think definitely are better in this remake, that are improved, starting with the Bomber's Notebook. I know some hardcore OG Majora's Mask fans may hate it, but I really don't think they understand the point of, like, the Bomber's Notebook. It doesn't, like, make the game easier. Like, I have issues trying to remember things. I can forget easily. So if I go up to some NPC in the world, talk to them, and they have some important dialogue that I go through, I'm like, oh, okay, I have to remember this. I'm not going to remember it. So the Bomber's Notebook pretty much just, it's not like giving you directions as to where to go or what to do for each quest. It just sort of logs what you already know about these different people. So that's pretty much why I like the Bomber's Notebook and why I think it's a great thing. And that's also kind of why I specifically chose to fully play through Majora's Mask 3D first, before going to the original, which I will buy an actual original N64 copy of. It's just important to know that some people just have trouble remembering, but the logbook, the Bomber's Notebook, whatever, there's a cat. It just helps to remember that information that you saw before. It just helps me keep track of the conversations I had, the important information that I was like, oh, I should probably remember that, but then I forgot. The Bomber's Notebook helps you remember that, and that way, if it's been a while since you've talked to one specific character about this thing, if you ever decide to actually go forward with trying to learn more, you can do that at any point in time in the future, instead of having to do it immediately after. I'm sorry, there's a goblin mode cat in here that's just going crazy. That's why there's any background noise right now. It's crazy. So yeah, that was the first thing. I think if you think the Bomber's Notebook is some kind of bad thing, allowing players to keep track of, all the different things going on in the world and trying to just remember all this important information, I think there's something wrong with you. I think there might legitimately be something wrong with you if you think that makes the game worse somehow, that it ruins the experience. No, just stop. Brother, an old-ass game gets a logbook and you're complaining? What world do you live in? That's my opinion on anybody who thinks the Bomber's Notebook is a bad addition. Next up, the clock and the Song of Double Time. Now, with the remake, it has a more readable clock. You can actually see what time it is, what exact time. It's not hard to read. It's very simple, very straightforward, which I understand it's not as stylized, or maybe it doesn't look as cool as the original clock, but it's more readable, it's more understandable. So I think that's an improvement. And along with that, you have an improved Song of Double Time. So in the original game, if it was the middle of the day on the first day, when you play the Song of Double Time, it would just take you to the beginning of the night of the first day. And then if you played the Song of Double Time in the middle of the night on the first day, it would take you to the beginning of the morning of the second day. So you can't really choose what specific time. It just takes you to the next kind of checkpoint in time. So you go morning, night, so on and so forth. But in this remake, they improved the Song of Double Time. So now you can skip to pretty much any specific point in time. Not that specific, but just any hour during the day. And then if you want to, you can turn it all the way, go to the next day, and it will send you to the morning of the next day, but then you can play it again and go to any point during the next day. So it's very useful for just trying to get to what is this cat doing? I am truly sorry about this. It's tragic. I don't know what's wrong with this cat. I really don't. But anyway, it allows you to just fast forward in time to like any major point that you want to go to, and that way you don't have to wait as long. Like maybe there's a very specific point in the night where something happens, and in the original game you could only go to the beginning of the night, and then you just have to wait for that event to happen. But in this game, you can just skip right to that point and get it already started. So it's very useful. It just speeds things up, makes it more efficient. So yeah. As for any other good improvements, I guess saving at the owl statues is cool, but it's not really anything that special. They just changed the way you save the game. Not that big of a deal, I'd say. But for the rest of the changes in the game, like, there were layout changes in Clocktown. I didn't know that when I decided to play the original version on the Virtual Console, and I was very confused. But yeah, they pretty much, for Clocktown, they changed the layout a little bit to be more symmetrical in the South Clocktown, and they also changed where the bank was. But yeah, it's not really a big change or anything, and it doesn't really negatively affect the game. It's just kind of weird that they did that they just randomly changed that. It's odd. I also believe they may have changed the way swimming works when you're in Zora form. I don't know. I haven't gotten that far in the original version, so I couldn't tell you. But one thing I can tell you is the boss changes. That is something that is probably the most well-known change between the two versions of the game, where they just kind of randomly change the bosses for no reason. They were fine in the original game, but for some reason, Grezzo, the people responsible behind this remake, just decided to change the bosses for some reason. So the first two bosses, you have not anything too major. So pretty much every dungeon boss now has an eye for some reason. So you're not really attacking to just do damage to them. You're attacking them to stun them so that they're just stunned. This little eye pops out, and then you have to attack the eye, and then they take damage. It's so weird. but that's not even like the biggest, stupidest thing that they did with the bosses. They also made some minor changes to how you fight the bosses in general. Like, I think the first boss, they made a few minor changes. I think you can fight the first dungeon boss as a Deku or Deku. You know, if you change to a Deku using the mask and then going into the little flowers and then popping up and then just dropping Deku nuts on them on the boss. I think that was a change in the first boss. But the big changes were in the last two bosses of the game, where there's now 2 different phases. Now, it wasn't like that in the original game, as you can probably guess. In the original game, there was like one phase for those 2 bosses, the final 2 bosses. One phase that you have to deal with. You fight it, you beat it, that's it, you're done. But in this game, you have... They made it so there's 2 different phases to kind of unnecessarily prolong the boss fight. So, pretty much, when you're fighting Gayorg, the boss of the 3rd major dungeon in the game, first, you know, it's swimming in the water, you shoot it with some arrows, and then, you know, it tries popping up at you and stuff. But then the platform sinks, you go underwater, you have to fight as Azora. And, you know, it's a cool idea, but that change and the changes they made to the final dungeon boss in the game, it was just stupid. It made the bosses longer and more annoying, in my opinion. The bosses just seem to take too long, at least in my original playthrough. This playthrough, since I had already beaten them before, it was a little faster and easier to go through. But in my original playthroughs of the game, those points would always be like, do I even want to get this far? Or should I just start another playthrough again? Because I don't want to fight these dumb bosses again. They were so annoying. It's so stupid that they just decided to change these bosses for no reason. Because as I found out later, they weren't like that in the original game. Why? Probably because they were smarter when making the original game. I don't understand why Grezzo felt the need to change up these bosses. I guess they wanted to make them more difficult, but at the same time, they didn't make it more difficult in the right way. They just kind of made it longer and more annoying and stressful. But yeah, those are pretty much all the major changes that I could think of between the original version and the remake. Now I'm going to talk about the reason why I love this game. Basically, all the aspects that they just couldn't change between versions. The aspects that stuck, because if they changed them, it would be basically a completely different game at that point. So I'm going to talk about why this game currently is my second favorite game of all time. And that could change. Actually getting to experience the original, I may change that to be the original Majora's Mask. But anyway, The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask is one of the most unique feeling Zelda games I have ever played. Alongside Wind Waker, with that game's unique art style and pretty interesting story, this game has the most unique feeling and tone of any Zelda game. So it seems, you know, as cute and friendly as Ocarina of Time. It doesn't seem super dark or anything. Like, Ocarina of Time would get sometimes pretty dark, but it would never really get that dark. It would be kind of a little more lighthearted than something like Twilight Princess. You know, it would just be, you know, these cartoonish almost characters, you know, but they don't look cartoonish, but they act kind of like cartoons, these different characters and NPCs in the world, and just in general, it feels like it's, you know, lighthearted on the surface, but then when you get deeper into the game, it is so much darker than that. So the main premise of the game, as most people know, is that there are 3 days before the moon crashes down onto Termina, the Earth, whatever, and just destroys everything. A complete doomsday scenario. And that's all because of this Skull Kid who put on the Majora's Mask, that messed with his head and just made him go crazy. And then, bam, he starts to fucking send the moon down to start a fucking rapture. Like, what? And just in general, the whole theme of the game is just sort of death. That is pretty much the overarching theme that I find throughout this game. Dealing or accepting death. Because during the course of the 3 days throughout the game, all the NPCs and characters in the world of Termina debate, wow, this moon is getting pretty close to us. I wonder if it's like gonna crash down to us, or like what's the deal? Why is it getting so close to us? To then on the final day, this is it. The world is coming to an end. We just have to accept that. We just have to deal with that. That's so dark, and all the characters, all the NPCs realize that. And even though you don't have these heartfelt voice acted lines, you can still feel the emotion reading through these through these text lines, this dialogue, just seeing how all these different characters are coming to terms with the doomsday, with their death, with the end of everything. They're just realizing that and accepting it. It truly is very dark. And that's not even the only spots where death is present as a theme. So when you get these transformation masks that turn you basically into a completely different species within the Zelda lore, you can turn into a Deku, a Goron, or a Zora. Those masks come from dead people within the world. You have a Goron, the ghost of a Goron, that just can't accept his death. You follow him to his grave, where you sing the song of healing, where he can finally go to rest, where he can finally be at peace. And you kind of feel that with the other characters, like the Zora. You do the same thing. And in the beginning of the game, you see this dead, withered looking tree that looks almost like it has like a face, like it could be a Deku. And guess what? Turns out that's the Deku that the Skull Kid with Majora's Mask killed and turned into a mask that turned you into a... That's how he turned you into a Deku, by killing this other innocent Deku. Death is present throughout the entirety of the game. And it's it's a lot of pressure, I'd say, on the game. You really feel a lot of pressure. It feels stressful, dark, but in a good way. You feel the urgency, the need to save these people from the inevitable end that is coming for them. You become so connected to the world, the characters, everything, that you get invested, and you have to save them. You want to save them. You just have to keep repeating the cycle, getting every new thing, so that you can finally, when the day comes, end it with the final confrontation with Majora's Mask. It truly is one of the most unique feeling games I have ever played, just in general. And truly, I think, in my opinion, it is more of a masterpiece than Ocarina of Time. Now, of course, I do give credit to Ocarina of Time for being the first 3D Zelda game, for being the first to conjure up these different elements that were able to be used by Majora's Mask they reused a bunch of stuff when making Majora's Mask. So I don't think Ocarina of Time would still be overrated. I think it's properly rated considering its impact and everything. But in my opinion, I just found Majora's Mask to be a more impactful, a more deep, a more emotional game. Also, going on to the gameplay elements, there are things that Majora's Mask also does better than Ocarina of Time. So Ocarina of Time's big gimmick was, after you beat the first 3 dungeons of the game, bam, you get locked away for 7 years. Now you're an adult and you can time travel between child and adult, and things are different. In this game, there's still time travel, and I feel it's a lot more in depth because every single NPC, every single character has a specific schedule in the world of Termina. They all have different events that they're going to, that they're trying to do, and it makes the world feel more real because it's like these are actual people that have things that they have to do in their lives. They have actual stuff in their lives. It's just more investing, it's just bigger, I guess I could say. I'm having trouble coming up with the words, but yeah. And that makes just the whole gameplay loop more interesting. Well, not maybe almost as interesting, maybe more than Ocarina of Time's time travel loop where you go from child to adult. I'd say I think it's more interesting just because they were able to give all these different characters and just the world in general more depth. And also another big gimmick of Majora's Mask, besides time travel, is masks, which are basically these bigger new items that you can get that can accomplish things. So most masks you get from completing a quest, they're quest rewards, and then you can use them in other certain places to get a piece of heart. Pretty simple, I know, but it still does give every mask a purpose in the game. It does give a purpose to every mask you collect, and in the end of the game, when you collect all the masks, 23, you get the final 24th mask, which is the Fierce Deity's mask. So you do feel rewarded each time for collecting every mask. And so many of the different masks hold some kind of emotional value to the character that you received it from. Almost all of them. And it's just, all of them just feel so unique, and you can use them for other scenarios with some of the different masks. And then you have some of the more major masks. The masks that you get in the main quests of the game are the transformation masks that I kind of mentioned earlier, where you can turn into a Deku, you can turn into a Goron, or turn into a Zora with these different masks that also change up your abilities entirely to create completely new gameplay aspects that is present in the dungeons and in certain parts of the world of Termina, where you have to use these different transformation masks to actually accomplish these tasks. It is very well designed. It's very special. It makes the game so much more interesting. Sometimes you might want to just pop on like the Goron's mask so you can just roll around through the world as a Goron, just speeding through, because that's one of your abilities. You can just roll. Like, damn, that's pretty cool. And also, moving on to other gameplay aspects, this game has less dungeons than Ocarina of Time, and I think the main story doesn't offer... It offers no more, I guess no less than Ocarina of Time, but you get so much more in the side content. You have so many different side quests, you have so many more side quests that all feel more in depth and more rewarding. Each side quest feels special, unique. You get some kind of connection to many of them, where you just feel like, you have to do this. You have to, not just for the reward, but to see how it impacts the characters involved. But just in general, this game is more side quest focused than pretty much any of the other Zelda games. You have so many more side quests. They're all very unique and have so many different things that you can do. They're just so much fun to go through them and complete them, even if they're more simple than others. Just each and every side quest makes the game the game. It gives it its main, gameplay, I guess, attraction. Like that's its main appeal, I guess, more than the main dungeons, the main quests. It offers so much in the way of side content. You can just find a couple different mini dungeons in the world and just complete them and get nice little rewards. And even in one of the mini dungeons, one of the spider houses near the ocean, the Great Sea. What the fuck is it called? I forgot. But anyway, one of the spider houses near the ocean in the game. Not only is it a mini dungeon where you kill all these gold skulltulas to get a reward, but there's also a side quest within the spider house. So if you get the captain's hat, which is a mask that you can obtain somewhere else, you can learn about these different style enemies that are in this spider house. Long deceased people that have been in this spider house. And with the captain's hat, not only will they not attack you, you can communicate with them. You can learn more about what's going on with the spider house, and you can learn a pattern that in one of the main rooms of the spider house. Once you get all that information, you can use that to basically input this code, kind of, and then you unlock this room that has a chest that has another reward. So you have a side quest within a piece of side content. It's just side quests and side content out the wazoo in every corner of the world of Termina. And that is the main gameplay aspect that makes me love Majora's Mask more than Ocarina of Time. Now, in terms of other things, I mean, the art style is the same as Ocarina of Time's. Pretty much that's all the main things that I wanted to go into with this game. Just the tone, the feeling, and the side content and the characters within this game make it feel so unique compared to any other game. And I think it's one of the best gaming experiences you can have. So if you haven't played... That is the washer. The washing machine. So, if you haven't played Majora's Mask before, if you have a 3DS, a Nintendo Switch, with the online, or you have an original Nintendo 64 or whatever, maybe you have just a computer and you can just want to emulate the game, do it. It is a one-of-a-kind experience that I think everyone should go through, that everyone should try and 100%, because really, there is nothing like this game. The whole experience, through and through, 100%ing it, it's an experience like no other in video games. So, if you have anything you can play it on, just go for it, because honestly, it is probably my second favorite game of all time. And consequently, my second favorite Zelda game of all time. Because there is one other Zelda game that I like more than Majora's Mask, that I will probably talk about in a more bigger video, I guess. But yeah, that was Majora's Mask 3D. That was my experience with it. I just wanted to, talk about why I think it's so amazing. Of course, there are some caveats to the remake, They changed some things for the better, changed some things for the worse. So, yeah. But I just wanted to talk about it since I recently beat it, I recently 100%ed it, and I just wanted to talk about it. So, that is all. Goodbye.